To today's astrological update. My name is Michelle Marie, and I am the owner and operator of Astrological Tarot. I am both a Vedic astrologer and a tarot and oracle card reader. And it is absolutely lovely to see you all on this Saturn day morning, aka Shani Dev's morning. I had to come on about 5 minutes later because it was Saturn Hora until 8:33, 8:34. So I didn't want to. I wanted to do service and cleaning and other things during that time. So otherwise, I can get blocked. Shani has that ability to do that, especially because he rules my, he's in my 10th house. He rules my 10th house. So my moon is there. So, oh, but it is absolutely lovely to see you guys. I'm dressed pretty simply today. I don't have a lot of black or dark blue shirts, but I did wear my my yoga camp shirt, which is kind of like a dark green. And I tried to dress a little more simple for Shani Dev today. He is all about service. He's all about karma yoga, and he's the karmic teacher in our charts. So what he does is he influences in ways that get our minds out of the individual little I and into the collective, because he is very much for everyone, and especially those who are disabled, people who are sick or older in their years. And he also rules over people who do a lot of hard work and menial labor for not a lot of pay. So Shani is very much an advocate. He's kind of like the Bernie Sanders in our world. He's constantly looking out for the underdog. So I really appreciate him and his influence. And he's exalted in my chart, so we get along pretty well. And he likes it. He likes it when I serve and when I'm able to kind of get out of the how do I say it? The more egoistic ways of being and living, because that's what we're all here to do, is to drop that little I for the big I. We've got a lot of energy going on in the sky today. I try to cover this every day, but it is going to be a little better, at least for the divine feminine, a little bit today. Now, one thing that we need to keep in mind is the moon is conjunct Saturn today. So if you're feeling under some emotional strain, that's kind of the energy that you're feeling, because when Saturn sits on top of our moon, that's our inner emotional state, we can feel a little, okay. He's been going over my moon for the past, he hit the peak in 2023. And it's really intense because that's when you have to pay off a lot of emotional karma, and he tries to get you right back on that dharmic path. So it can be painful if you resist, but if you just go with it and say, okay, Shani's teaching me a lesson, then it's a little easier. But that's why remedies are so important and why we prescribe them in Vedic astrology. If we do our spiritual remedies, some of that little ego that I talk about and I talked about yesterday can be kind of washed away. We got to get that Tamas off of it. Another thing that has been going on continuously, especially now that Venus is moving further into Pisces, is there is a Venus Neptune Rahu conjunction. So that could bring some fogging into the female collective and the light workers. So it's important that we choose to see reality at this time and point things out as they are. Uranus is in Aries, getting ready to move into Taurus. So Uranus is represented by Indra. So that's going to strike lightning into a lot of our structures, the way that we do things. Jupiter is in Taurus. So that's good if you're looking to reallocate your wealth, and depending on what house he's in for you, and look at things from a, how do I say this, more of like maybe getting in touch with a guru, someone to help you with your finances during this time, because we're about to go through a shakeup, at least in the United States. And when the United States is affected, the world's affected. So that's just kind of how things go now. Mars is still retrograde, and he is in Gemini. So we need to be careful regarding our communications. Think before we speak, okay? And read before we think. I think it was Fran Lebowitz that said that. Or is that right, honey? Fran Lebowitz? I think so. Yeah, I think so. I like her a lot. Ketu and Rahu are still on that nodal axis between Pisces and Virgo. Ketu represents our bureaucrats at our institutions. So if you feel like, why have they been dropping the ball for the last, almost 18 months? That's why. Okay. Well, over in where we lived in Washington, we noticed that the garbage collectors stopped coming every week. It's every 2 weeks, and it led to a lot of issues there. And the parks department stopped taking care of the parks. And so when we had big storms come, our power was out for like 9 days at a time, which is unacceptable, but it's because they weren't going out and doing their jobs. They weren't mowing, they weren't trimming. And if you went out, they were like, you're not union, you can't do this. And it's like, well, I don't want my power to go out. So that was some of those agencies that were being affected by the eclipses. So it was really interesting to see. And Rahu's been fogging the light workers for a while and creating illusions and things like that. He's been eclipsing a lot of the more Sattvic elements of our community. So it's important that we be aware of that. And then we also have Mercury is at 12 degrees of sidereal Capricorn, and Pluto is at 7 degrees. They were exactly conjunct the 28th and 29th, so depending on where you lived. And so now that he's moving away, we can expect a little more clarity in our conversations and less kind of like death-like thinking and intellectualism, which is good. And the sun is at about 18 degrees of Capricorn, closer to Mercury. So he's further away from Pluto. So we can enjoy that. So that's just a few things that are going on for that. All right. So we are in Purva Bhadra today. Okay. And this is the scorching or the burning star. All right. It's both between Aquarius and Pisces. Okay. It straddles those two signs. But this is a really interesting nakshatra. It's actually Alpha Beta Pegasi. It's part of the Pegasus. So it's it's got two sides to it. You can see the two different personalities here. There are two sides of this personality. One that is kind of greedy, it's angry, it's deceitful, and the other one is very truthful. It's a warrior, it's a visionary, it's idealistic, and it's very self-reliant. So there are two sides of this personality, and I've seen people with this nakshatra exert them. When they come from a place of fear, you get to see the more negative side of their personality that comes out, and they can hurt others. Whereas if they're, how do I say this, either more spiritually developed or they're going through a happy period of their life, you see the more kind and truthful side to them. This is represented by the lion, the male lion, so and the sword as well. And they can go through life using their sword, their flaming sword, to and spiritual fire to lift others up, or they can destroy their own sattvic or pure qualities. So it's important that they guard against greed, because whatever they do in this birth, they're going to have to pay back in the next. So the main thing that I would warn you guys against today is to not allow some of the more tamasic elements in. Try to focus on your spirituality, focus on truth. Don't allow that Rahu, Neptune, Venus conjunction to fog you. Don't allow Mars and Gemini to create anger in your speech. Don't allow Jupiter and Taurus to bring out more greed. Those are the things that we try to fight as light workers and as practitioners, whatever modality that you come from. And we do a prayer over every meal that asks us to take away a lot of those lower nature qualities. So, because we don't want to give into that lower nature. It's not good for us. So I'll talk a little bit about Shani. I'll show you what he looks like. This is one of the depictions of him riding his crow, a kaka in Sanskrit. It's Kaka Dwajaya Vidmahe is part of his mantra, and it's he who has a crow on his flag. One of the best ways to appease Lord Shani is you can feed the crows and the birds today, because he likes it when we do that. They really love peanuts. What I do is I go to Costco or just one of the marts here in Mexico, because now I'm living here. When I was in Kirkland, I went to Costco. And I just get the peanuts and wash them in a colander, and then I would bring them outside and feed them to the crows. And I would do his seed mantra while I did that. So his seed mantra is Om Pram Prim Pram Sa Shanishwaraya Namaha. And you can think of that mantra while you're actually doing service, or you're feeding crows, or you can sit down in meditation and just use a simple mala to count out 108. Okay. And you hold the mala like this, and you just go bead by bead. All right. You can count on this hand how many malas that you are doing. And that is a wonderful way to appease Lord Shani and reduce some of that karma. Additionally, the Pratyadi Devata, the Adi Devata, which helps us with our mind, is Brahma. And Brahma, as you can see there, is the creator Vishnu behind him is the preserver, and then there in the audience with Nandi is Shiva. He's the destroyer, and we need all three of the Trimurti to keep balance. And so Brahma, the creator, is who we pray to for a balanced mind, so that we can see the world as more of a dream and less of an egoistic interpretation. And then the Pratyadi, he's one of my favorites, is Lord Yama. And Lord Yama is the brother of Lord Shani. They're brothers, half-brothers technically, because Saturn's, there's a whole story behind Saturn's birth, but his, the original wife of the sun got a little too heated being around him. So she created a likeness of herself and left to get a break. And during that time, Chaya, and he was basically, long story short, Shani was born. And so because of that, when Shani took on a human form to learn the human experience and the Shastras and the Upanishads, etc., Brihaspati, the guru, refused to teach him because he wasn't the legitimate son of the sun and his wife. He was a copy, so to speak. And he doesn't get along with Brihaspati for that reason. But so Venus came along, Shukra, who's guru to the demons, and taught him all of the things that he needed to know that Brihaspati didn't. So there's a little bit of separation there. But Yama is the god of death, and Shani is the karmic teacher. So they work together to determine how we pay off our karma. Yama decides what realm we go to next after speaking to Chitragupta, the keeper of the Akashic records. And Shani meets us there and goes, okay, during my time, you get to pay off your karma. Okay, so that's kind of how they work together to make sure that we are on the right path. Because, I mean, a lot of people fear Shani, but what he does is he kind of chips away at that little I, that little ego, so that we start thinking more sophically and about other people. And that is going to bring us closer to Ananda, bliss, and the divine will, and the divine thought, and, samadhi, which is the whole goal of being here. We got to cross that ocean of samsara, so, which is the wheel that represents the astrological chart. Okay, so now that I've gone over some of that, I'm going to pick a few tarot cards so we can look at the energy of today. Okay. Now this kind of fits in with what's going on today, because I know that the tariffs start today, at least in the United States, and that's going to affect us on a global level. So the first one I picked was the King of Pentacles reversed. We all know who this is, okay? So the King of Pentacles is, he's a very interesting energy. When he's reversed, it's corruption, it's material obsession, and it's stagnation. And then I pulled the Knight of Wands. That's recklessness, impulsivity, and misguided passion. This is my card for Elon Musk. This is my card for Donald Trump. And I'll go into what these guys mean a little bit more. But now that they showed up, I'm going to actually share a passage from Concentration and Meditation, because that goes, like, these two cards go directly into what we can expect and learn from the current leadership, okay? So the passage that I picked today, these are mental obstacles in our meditation. And this talks about the lower nature. This is the stuff that we kind of have to shirk as we're having our human experiences here. So if the lower nature or old personality becomes obstinate, self-assertive, and it is supported and justified by the lower mind and will, when matter becomes very serious, he becomes incorrigible, turbulent, unruly, arrogant, impertinent. He breaks all the rules and disciplines. Such an aspirant clings to his old self. That's the animal self. He has not surrendered himself to the Lord or to a personal guru. He is ever ready to revolt against any man for little things, and he will never obey. He is not willing to receive any spiritual instruction. He is self-willed and self-satisfied, and he is not ready to accept his weaknesses or any defects. He thinks he is a flawless man of great achievements, and he leads a happy-go-lucky life. The old personality asserts itself in past forms of our lower nature. He asserts and follows his own crude, egoistic ideas, desires, fancies, and convenience. That's very much like this guy. He claims the right to follow his own human, unregenerate, asuric is demonic, diabolical nature, with the all untruthfulness, ignorance, selfishness, rudeness, and to express all impure stuff in speech, action and behavior. He argues vehemently and defends himself in a variety of ways and paints his life in special colors. It's like the emperor who wore no clothes. He tries to continue his past habitual ways of thinking, speaking, and feeling. He professes one thing and practices another thing. That's a hypocrite. He tries to force his wrong views and opinions on others. If others are not willing to accept his wrong views, he is ready to fight against them. He at once stands up in revolt. He asserts that his views and only his views are correct, and that those who try to oppose his views are unjust, unreasonable, and uneducated. He tries to persuade and convince others that his views are very reasonable and that his ways of action are the only right ways of action for all, and that his ways and views are in full accordance to the science of yoga and all the philosophies. Marvelous people they are. Really, the world is in need of such wonderful, useful people in abundance. That's Swami Sivananda being a little sarcastic there. If he is really frank with himself and straightforward with his guru, that means if he listens to gurus, if he really desires to improve himself, he will begin to realize his folly and defects and recognize the source and nature of his resistance. He will soon be on the direct road to correct and change himself, but he prefers to conceal his old Asuric nature, his old diabolical thoughts under some justification or excuse or other shelter. So that is a big mental obstacle in meditation, because what it does is it really feeds that little I. And I found a passage in the Gita that kind of that goes along with this. So I talk a little bit about the gunas, and that's Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Okay, so let's talk about what those are. Purity, passion, and inertia. These qualities, O Arjuna is who Krishna is speaking to, born of nature, bind fast in the body, the embodied, and the indestructible. Sattva is the best. Rajas comes next. Tamas is the lowest and worst. That's the lower nature we were talking about. The three qualities indicate the triple mentality. They produce attachments in individual souls, and they dilute them and bind them down, as it were, to samsara. That's the wheel of birth and death. We have to keep coming back here until we learn. Just as the three conditions of childhood, youth, and old age are found in the same body, these three qualities inhere in the mind. The soul gets limited by identifying itself with the body and the three qualities. It is subject to birth and death experiences, happiness and misery, pleasure and pain, joy and sorrow, until it realizes its identity with the supreme self, that source. The word guna is translated as quality. It does not signify property, attribute, or quality, such as the blue color of cloth. Gunas are the primary constituents of nature and are the basis of all substances. Therefore, it's not proper to call them qualities inhering in substances. If you want to attain freedom or perfection, if you wish to become immortal, you must rise above the modes of nature and transcend the gunas. So if the water in a vessel is agitated, the reflected sun in the water appears to be agitated through pratibimba adhyasa, superimposition of reflection on the water. Even so, the pure unchanging self appears to be bound by the qualities of nature through superimposition. The reality of the self is ever free and untainted and is beyond them. The gunas, which are the only forms of ignorance ever dependent on the knower of the field, they bind fast to the knower of the field, and they give him the basis of their existence. They have him as the basis of their existence, excuse me. So the knowledge of these gunas and their operation is necessary toward our spiritual growth. Only if you have this knowledge can you free yourself from their clutches. Mahabaho, mighty armed, with strong and sinewy arms, reaching down to the knees. This is an auspicious sign. Yogis and sages have beautiful arms. These three gunas are present in all human beings. One is free from the operation of any one of the three qualities of nature. They are not constant. Sometimes sattva predominates, that's purity. Other times rajas, that is passion and drive. Or others tamas predominates, which is like sloth and inertia. Sattva has the characteristics of effulgence. It is also harmony, goodness, and purity. Rajas is passion or activity. Tamas is inertia or darkness. Analyze all the phenomena in terms of these three, know their characteristics, stand as a witness of these qualities, Do not identify yourself with them, but separate yourself from them and become a gunatita. You will attain supreme peace or immortality and supreme bliss. Now, a lot of us, what we're doing here in Kali Yuga is fighting against the Tamas, because this is a very tamasic and dark time. And that's why I think I pulled these two guys for the collective reading today. So the King of Pentacles reversed, that's corruption, that's material obsession, that's stagnation. When he's upright, which is what we like him, he represents stability, abundance, and leadership. However, when he's reversed, he can become very greedy and controlling and corrupt. That's very tamasic. He hoards wealth. He abuses power. He resists a lot of change. Enabling this kind of energy allows materialism to dominate our spiritual wisdom, which we need to fight against as light workers. And that leads to a lot of societal stagnation and unethical leadership, which I think we're all seeing a lot of, and an unwillingness to evolve as a person or take responsibility for what you've done. So this is the tamasic influence that I was talking about that we need to kind of push against, because what that does is it brings a lot of rigidity, a lot of selfishness, a lot of attachment to that status quo, and it prevents growth and that deeper wisdom that we all are here to learn. So in Vedic tradition, those who are trapped in Tamas, they can become very lethargic. Their resistance to truth, like falling asleep in court, things like that. They're overly attached to material comforts. That leads to a lot of societal decay, because people see that, and if that's our leader, that's not good for the kids, right? So if we enable this reversed king, we enforce a world where all of our resources are hoarded, and then power is wielded without any integrity. The second card I picked was the Knight of Wands, and he came up reversed, okay? That's recklessness, impulsivity, and misguided passion. This is my card for Elon Musk in the election. When I was pulling cards for this, I got the Knight of Wands reversed next to Kamala and Trump every time. And I said, who is this guy? Who's going to just like insert himself into this election? Well, now we know. So he when he's upright, which is when we like him, he represents a lot of adventure, okay? But if that's not guided correctly, that adventure, it's very fiery and it can be very destructive, very impatient, very careless, easily distracted. Enabling this energy, that's going to lead to a lot of chaos, a lot of short-sighted decisions, unstable leadership, and it's going to be driven by ego rather than wisdom, okay? Because we don't like that impulsivity. Now, even though the Knight of Wands is a very Rajasic knight, when he's upside down, it does align with Tamas, because he's creating a lot of confusion, aggression without purpose, and a complete lack of discipline, okay? And that happens when people have been enabled way too much. So when Tamas predominates, people can act very impulsively without any foresight or wisdom, and they're driven by unchecked emotions, okay? So when we collectively indulge this reversed knight, we allow a lot of distractions, a lot of misinformation, a lot of rash decision making that's not really good for the collective. And those take precedence over thoughtful action that is best for everyone involved. So it's wise to resist these tamasic energies. And in the Vedas, the path to liberation, we call that moksha. That requires transcending tamas and cultivating through rajas, and then cultivating that more sattvic purity. Like I described it as the lotus. Tamas is the seed that is under the dirt. Rajas is the stalk growing up toward the light, and sattva is under the sun in that beautiful bloom. And that is that beautiful moksha state. But if we are able to shed ourselves of those gunas and become a guntita and rise above them, then we have mastered self-realization. Not a lot of us are able to do that in Kali Yuga, but if you are following a philosophy or a master, it is a good start. It's good to find that guru, even if it's just in a book, okay? So today, try to focus on embodying the upright versions of these two. Be wise, be responsible, be a steward of abundance rather than a hoarder. Try to reach out to people that are struggling, and then harness the Knight of Wands with purpose, that beautiful fiery energy. Be passionate yet disciplined, and lead with inspiration rather than impulsivity, okay? So when we resist the tamasic influences that are really, really big in the collective right now, We can embrace more conscious leadership. We can create more intentional action. And because we want a world that's thriving on wisdom. We don't want one that's chaos, okay? Ignorance, instability, those types of things. So I think that's the main message that the divine is giving us today, is that when we feed these types of personalities and we put them in power, it will negatively affect us. And what was really shocking for Jonathan and I to learn was when we did a deep dive into what happened regarding the people who did, in fact, vote for the current leadership. A lot of them were male. And since we've been here in Mexico, Jonathan and I have both been asked, like, oh, where are you guys from? Why did you move here? And we've been asked directly what our political views are by a couple of people. And it's really shocking to see how the Mexican people think of Trump. There is a machismo culture here. And then there's also a culture that goes, we can't stand this guy. But there is a culture here that really loves him. They think he's smart. They think he's powerful. They like the fact that he's able to get away with those things. And it's a little scary to know that is in and around the collective, but those are the people that are voting for this guy. When I was going to college, I was a Greek house coordinator and a resident assistant. I did that because it was, room and board, and then I was basically a property manager for the university. And I ran into a lot of frat boys that were destroying property, hurting women, killing each other, things like that, hazing. And they kind of take on that quality, that bro, really destructive. They look up to guys that are bullies personality. And we have to resist that. And if we see them in our families, especially with our young men and old men, we need to nip it in the bud, because that is something that we cannot abide by, especially as the divine feminine is likely to get crushed under this weight. So it's important that we resist by not enabling these personalities in our families and in our friends, in our friendships or our circles. When the kryptonite to these guys is you don't give them power and you don't give them your attention. The reason why he was able to rise to power was because in journalism, if it bleeds, it leads. And they were going for those eyeballs. They were going for that ad space. And they spent way too much time airing this guy. And it just made him more and more powerful. The best thing that you can do is what my therapist called gray rock. You ignore them. They don't matter. Don't ignore them to the point where you're not paying attention to what's going on, but don't give them your peace. Don't give them your space. And people that really support these personalities, just walk on. They're not your friends. They basically voted for the, in my opinion, death of other people. So you don't want to be around personalities that support that kind of ideology. Okay. And then, so you said Elon wants access to the Treasury and Social Security section. That's because he wants to, that's the impulsive energy. He wants to go to Mars. And he doesn't want to have to pay for it, even though he's one of the richest men in the world. It's greed off the cuff, guys. And then, okay, King of Pentacle reverse, let them eat cake. Yes, Miss Egg, that's a good analogy, because that was the French Revolution is very similar to what we're headed toward here. And then he's not a government official. That's federal felony in access to accounts. Yes, it is a felony. Look who got elected. So, and there are guys even here in Mexico. And by the way, one of the guys that we talked to actually went to prison and instead of being deported. And he supports him because he thinks he's strong. And I'm just like, okay, that's you be you do you, but wow. So do you know the answer? Better economically to live there. I think that based on the conversations that we're having, the cartels are already making deals with Trump, and it's whatever cartel gives him more money that is going to basically be in power here, because that's how things are run here. It's not really. The government is run by, like, for instance, I went downstairs to get my latte this morning, and there were two guards with full automatic weapons and like the bullets, like Rambo style bullets on the side, because they were emptying the till at like an OXXO. OXXOs are like 7-Elevens, but every time you see the till getting emptied, an armored car pulls up. Guys jump off the back of it with full automatic weapons and military gear, and they wait for all of the money to get distributed, and they walk out with it. And so they just stand there looking angry. And so I just went in and I got my coffee and I nodded, buenos dias, and I left. But here in Mexico, there's a lot of enforcement because that's cartel money. Okay, so it kind of depends on what side of the coin you're on. Jonathan and I are good law-abiding citizens. We keep to ourselves. We pay our bills. So I think we're going to be okay. But if things get a little odd, like one cartel wants more power than the other, it could create some instability and things like that. So we tend to just stay light. We're yogis anyway, so we have a carry-on, a suitcase, and Rosie, and we can jump at any time things get a little weird. And I think that is the way to live now, but that's just our opinion. And then I'm trying to get my husband to take our money out of the bank. We are actually, so just to let you guys know, Rahu and Ketu, the nodes, they're going in this year, they're going to be entering, let's see, the 3rd and 9th house of the United States. The 9th house is foreign travel and alliances, and the 3rd house is journalism and communications. So he's probably going to go after those areas before he enters the 2nd and the 8th house. The 8th house is inheritances, the 2nd house is savings accounts, and that will be in about 20 months. So we might have a little time, but they are really jumping the gun on this one. We are looking into, we've already moved our money out of Wells Fargo and Bank of America because we've noticed that there's no enforcement there when it comes to people getting into our accounts. We found that out last year. Someone was literally stealing about $2,500 a month out of Jonathan's savings account. And by the time we realized it, they said, oh no, it's too late, and we went, we're getting our money out of here. It was crazy. And so we moved it into another bank, but we're looking at international banking and things like that. If you guys want to know what's kind of going on, is Elon Musk has what's called an Anagarak Yoga in his 8th house. That's like a big demon sitting there. It's just without checks and balances. And Donald Trump, narcissism, okay, it was born during an eclipse, Niragandanta, which is a spiritual knot. That's my father, okay, not Donald Trump, but my father was born near Inagandanta during a new moon eclipse. So I know exactly how these personalities act because I had to grow up with them. And they only think about themselves. They're very dangerous, and the best way to protect yourself and your growth here as a human is to not have anything to do with them. Okay. So how do you answer? What are things? Okay, so things are going to be topsy-turvy economically for a while, Rose Blue. That's just the nature of things. The people that are in charge, it's kind of like, well, when are things going to get better? They're not going to get better right away. They're going to continue to kind of roll. Okay, so what my husband and I did was we just made ourselves light so that we can take flight. Okay, that's the main thing that we did. And oh, you're so welcome, sweetie. I'm glad that these are helpful for you, Nancy. And well, I mean, I can pull some cards for that for entertainment purposes only if credit unions are better. We're actually looking at international banking. Right now, we're using an account called Wise because that allows us to transfer dollars to whatever currency that we're living in. Let me ask about credit unions. Oh, okay, I got the King of Pentacles reversed and the Empress reversed, so that's a no for entertainment purposes only. I think that right now things are so up in the air and there is so little enforcement in these institutions that we're headed for some stuff. Okay. I will let you know what Jonathan and I are doing. We actually have a show called The Boomer Mill where we are going to be talking about what we're finding out internationally. Our main sources are like Pew Research Center and MIT, things like that. We try to keep politics out of it and just keep it as data-driven as possible. So you're welcome to follow that channel. And Rose Blue, we use Chase right now. But JP Morgan will eventually also probably be taken for a ride, like just everybody else, because that's just kind of how things are going. So is there any buzz on Mexico alliances with Russia because Trump wants Mexican natural resources? I'm wondering if Trump will go through the cartels. According to the locals here, he's already going through the cartels. And the current president, she's like, oh, don't worry about him. We're already making deals in the news. So that's what we're hearing from the locals here. And they're very vocal about it. They're very interested in our elections and how that affects them. So, oh, why did I move here? Okay. We moved here because my guides literally told us to move here, and we lost everything to crime in our area because of the just complete and total, how do I say this, non-enforcement that was taking place in our area. And I know that you, like, and a lot of people that are Democrat don't like to hear this, but we were literally overrun by a huge immigrant community as well, because the corporations are enslaving people via the H-1B program because we're from tech. And so the average, tech worker made between, let's say, $150,000 and $200,000 a year. We're talking like really good tech people, and you could hire someone from India for like maybe 30 grand and just stuff them all in a tiny apartment. So that's kind of what has been going on since COVID. They snuck a lot of this. His administration snuck a lot of people in, and Biden didn't really do a very good job of stopping these corporations from enslaving people. And so our area became an area where people were putting cars through windows and stealing everything. And this is a nice area too. People were going in and just filling their carts full of groceries and walking out with all of them. People were getting stabbed on the buses and in the streets. Jonathan had to literally order a firearm and walk outside with his firearm and show it to people to keep them off of us. So we just went, we can't live here. It's too dangerous. So we moved to Mexico, and it is safer here in our opinion. But we didn't want to live in an area where we couldn't walk outside, or we couldn't go to the store, or we couldn't like have a normal life. And also, Jonathan had a medical emergency, and it wasn't covered by his insurance, even though we had both private and he's on Medicare and we have private insurance. And our dental insurance wasn't covered when he had a dental emergency. So we just looked at that and went, we're living in a country that's full of corruption. And whether or not, whatever side you're on, it's the lack of enforcement that's allowing this to happen. And it was the lack of enforcement on the Democrat side that allowed this to happen. A felon should not be able to rise up and be president. That's my opinion. He should never have been able to run in the first place. They should have stopped him and enacted, what's that thing called? The law. It's their job to protect us, and they didn't do it. And so we saw the betrayal and we left. So that was the main reason for that. And two, we're not really attached to a lot of our stuff, to be honest. I mean, there were a few things that surprised me that I was kind of attached to, but that was more reason to let them go. And we just feel so much more free here, Rose Blue. I mean, and less anxious because we're able to just pick up and go when we need to, if that makes sense. As far as crypto, I would not be surprised if he has his own crypto, his face is on it, the whole thing. So that's kind of what I see there. But yeah, there are indigenous, we were actually, the indigenous communities in Washington was with my husband and his former partner did a lot of work with them. And there are some communities here as well, but they're going to be, in my opinion, the most affected because they have the most land and resources made available to them. There are farmers, there are workers. So, and then, yes, crypto is air money. It can just be flipped on and off at any point. I did invest in crypto a little bit back during COVID, and I did lose some money, but it was an interesting experience. It wasn't a whole lot. It was just me kind of dipping my toe in the water and seeing what was going to happen. It was like, I'm not doing that again. So I know that I'm saying people there in Mexico asking me why. Asking me, okay, why we moved there? Oh, okay, got it. Because we're gringos and we stand out. I don't know. They're very talkative here. It's not like when we were living in tech world where it was a little more, people looking at their phone and not making eye contact. So, and then you have a lot of that in the San Francisco Bay Area too. Okay, Miss Myrita, yeah. And then public tax money not going back to public communities. Yeah, that's a big, big thing. It's going into billionaires' pockets who are now becoming trillionaires. And that is why we talked about that Tamasic energy, the reversed King of Pentacles, the reversed Knight of Wands, which is a misuse of energy and not really paying attention to the collective. Now, Saturn is very strong in my chart, and he likes to look out for those underdogs. So it is it's an important thing to keep in mind as we move into these times, if we move into service, if we move into community. And I will say there is a little bit of a silver lining to this. All of those frat boys, those guys that think that he's going to share, they're probably going to be put in work camps, these Trump supporting guys. he's not going to let them stay at home and live off of their spouses and their mothers. He's going to put them in factories. So they're actually going to be forced to work for once in their lives. And that's what they get for voting for him. So we're really going to see a lot of stuff come out in March through May, especially May. March is when we're going to have those eclipses. I keep telling people beware the Ides of March. It's going to be the 14th when we have that energy come in. And then May is also going to be a really big month too. So just watch for those months and just take care. Try not to get anxious. And the number one thing that you can do is be that upright King of Pentacles. Be that upright Knight of Wands. And resist people who embody those qualities and those traits, because we need to keep good satsang, good company. Okay. So I'm sending you lots of love, and have a wonderful Saturn day. I hope you're able to do something of service and for each other today. Take care, everyone.